What's up everybody, it's Hammerdown Harry here and welcome to our very first ever Hammerdown Ranked, where we're going to be ranking the records from one of my favourite bands ever. So we're starting this week on our first episode with Stone Sour. Now, for those of you who don't know Stone Sour, you'll probably be very familiar with some of the musicians in the band. Of course, most famous Corey Taylor and Jim Root from Slipknot. Now, actually, the band Stone Sour was formed way back in 1992 before Slipknot started by Corey Taylor and Joel Eltman. Much like Slipknot, they were based in Des Moines in Iowa, and prior to releasing any albums, they did some demos between 92 and 96. Once Jim Root was in the band, Corey and Jim then focused a lot more on Slipknot and getting that first album out, and so we didn't actually get a full album until 2002. They were signed to Roadrunner Records, and when I say Stone Sour, one of my favourite bands ever, I really mean it. I have a Stone Sour tattoo right here. I don't know if you can see that. This was a poster in my bedroom when I was a teenager. Now, weirdly, Stone Sour are one of my very favourite bands that I actually never got to see live, which I'm very sad about to this day. I would have loved to have seen Stone Sour. I've seen Slipknot 3 times, but I've never seen Stone Sour. But today we have the task of delving into the albums and ranking them in order. So, starting at number 6, controversially, in my humble opinion, number 6, we have the self-titled debut album, Stone Sour. By this point in the band, Josh Rand had joined, and the debut album dropped in 2002. Now, this record certainly has some of the best Stone Sour songs ever on it, including Bother, which was even featured in Spider-Man. Bother is an incredible tune, very beautiful music video as well. That was the song that really set this band on fire. This album was also certified gold in the US. In my opinion, although there are many other fantastic songs on this record, especially Inhale and Get Inside, as good as their later stuff. To me, a lot of their later records were just so consistent all the way through, but I think on this particular first album, there's 4 or 5 tracks that nail it as some of the best Stone Sour songs ever, and then others that just don't quite meet up to the same standard. So that's why, for me, in number 6, we've got the self-titled debut album Stone Sour from 2002. So, moving on to number 5, we've got the House of Golden Bones Part 2. Now, for those of you who don't know, House of Golden Bones was a concept double album released in 2012 and 2013. This latter one, obviously 2013. And this was the very last record with Jim Root in the band before he went off to focus far more on Slipknot. So this particular half of the double album has some of my favourite Stone Sour songs on it. I think I'm going to say that for every album, to be honest, but songs like Stalemate, I think is an incredible tune. Beautiful song. I think 82 has one of my favourite guitar riffs on it in the intro. It's an awesome bit of guitar work. And the catchy Do Me a Favour. The album went as far as making number 10 in the US and number 11 here in the UK. One of the coolest things about this particular album is that you can actually build the House of Golden Bones out of the 2 album covers from the double album. I remember watching a video on YouTube when I was in my late teens, I think, and I built the house out of it from watching a YouTube video. Coolest thing ever, like such a random thing to add in. But the reason this finishes in 5th place out of the 6 records is simply because I think if you were to put all of the best songs from the 2 albums together, you'd probably have the best Stone Sour record ever. But simply because they're spaced out over 2 records, I just don't think individually that it's quite their best work yet. So moving on to number 4, and you probably guessed, House of Golden Bones Part 1. So this album only just picks it for me above the other one. It's got some stunning songs on it, including Travelers Part 1, wonderful song, Taciturn, which is, I mean, that's got some of the most beautiful lyrics I think I've ever heard in it. Some of the lines in there are just wonderful. Such a beautiful song. I also love the song Tired. That's one of my favourite Stone Sour tunes. And the music video for that's great. There's a lot of shots of Download Festival in there, and that gives me a lot of nostalgia because I've been to Download 5 times. I have a Download tattoo. The first part of this concept album also kicked off the comic series that came with it. There was a 4-part comic series to these albums and that ran along the concept of it. I haven't actually read those, but I'm sure they're really cool because if this band had been involved in it, it's probably pretty good. So this was the first Stone Sour album to feature Rachel Bolan from Skid Row, who came to join bass. And again, the only thing with this record that makes it not a top 3 album is simply the fact that if you took the best songs from both albums and put them together, that would be an insane album. But it's just not quite there. There's a couple of songs on both parts that they aren't quite as good as some of the other records in the top 3. So before we get to the top 3, we're going to take a quick pause to talk about the shirt that I'm wearing today. So this is a band called Feral Sun. So Feral Sun, they're London rockers. They've been around for a fairly long while now. They were doing pretty well pre-COVID. I mean, they've supported Skindred on tour, supported Puddle of Mud. So they've done some pretty big shows. They have some incredible songs out. My favourite personally is Blame. That song has some of the coolest riffs in the intro. Check that song out. I'm going to put the links in the comments below. They also have a full record released in 2014, which features their biggest and most successful song, Breathe. You need to check this band out. They're really, really cool. I'm featuring them because you could see Feral Sun supporting Stone Sour. If you listen to them, similar vibe on some of the work that they do, they'd certainly be a good tour support for them. So definitely check out Feral Sun. If you like Stone Sour, you'll probably like these guys as well. Pretty cool design as well. This is the album cover from Breathe on here, so give it a go. All right, okay, so we're in the top 3 now. So it gets a little bit sticky. But number 3 for me is the very last Stone Sour album, 2017's Hydrograd. This is the first and only album without guitarist Jim Root. As I mentioned before, by this point he'd gone to focus way more on Slipknot, so he wasn't doing Stone Sour anymore, which is sad. But anyway, Johnny Chow is in the band now, and he was pretty cool. And when this album was in the works, Johnny described it as less of the metal side of things and far more of a rock and roll album, and you can definitely hear that running through this record. It also has, personally, my favourite Stone Sour album cover. The red's very striking, big Stone Sour logo in the middle. For me, this is the best piece of album art that they've done. I just think it's really cool. Now, I remember watching the music video when Fabulous dropped. I mean, Fabulous is one of the most catchy songs Stone Sour have ever put out. The chorus is awesome. The gang vocals and like the sort of tail end of the choruses is just the coolest thing. Great tune. And then they dropped Song 3. Now, Song 3 now is one of the most successful Stone Sour songs on YouTube. I think it's got like 35 million views now. Like, it's done pretty well. Another great tune on this album, Rose Red, Violent Blue. This album's full of bangers. It really is an awesome piece of work. This album also made it to number 8 in the US Billboard charts and number 5 in the UK album charts. So it did pretty well. So for me, this is certainly the number 3 album. It isn't quite as good as the 2 albums that are particularly iconic to me, but it's a great record. In fact, well, all of the Stone Sour records are good. None of them are weak, you know, they're all good albums. So, number 2, this is where it gets very, very difficult, because these last 2 records that take the number 1 and 2 spot are albums that hold so many memories to me. They're very, very personal to me. Stone Sour were one of the first bands I ever got into when I started listening to heavier music. A guy called Mike introduced them to me years and years ago when I was in science class, sitting next to him in year 10, I think. And yeah, Stone Sour, one of the first bands that he introduced me to. And the first album that I got to hear was the album that I'm putting in number 2, Come Whatever May. So by this point in 2006, Joel Elkman had left the band and was then replaced by Roy Mayorga, who's the ex-Soulfly drummer. So some pretty good credentials there. This is the album that I fell in love with. This has some of the most important songs in the band's history, including arguably the most important, Through Glass. Now this song, wonderful song. It's helped many, many people through really tough times, me included in that, by the way. This album did so well, they ended up touring with Korn. Obviously, Corey had worked with Korn many, many times and toured with Slipknot prior to that. They also had an appearance on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. So this album certainly did big things for the band. And it actually, in 2017, finally got certified as platinum, their first platinum record. Not a bad achievement, certainly says something about the record. So this album made it to number 4 in the US as their highest charting album. In the UK it only got to 27, but still pretty good results. All of the songs on this album are just awesome. Hell and Consequences, Silly World, 30-31-50, Cardiff, they're all awesome. This album is heavy, at times it's slow, at times it's dark, at times it's fast. It's got everything in it, and I really, really think that this album is one of the greatest albums. Certainly shaped and changed me a lot, and it's an album that without I would not be as big a fan of heavy music as I am. So I owe a lot to this album. But this isn't number 1 for me personally. Number 1 for me is 2010's Audio Secrecy. This album was dedicated to Paul Gray after Slipknot bassist passed away, and it's a pretty nice tribute to him. This album is incredible. It's got some pretty cool artwork on. Also, interestingly, the first Stone Sour album without parental advisory sticker on it. I don't know if that's good or bad. This album reached number 6 in both the UK and the US and features one of the most catchy songs I've ever released, Say You'll Haunt Me. I mean, this song is the catchiest damn tune. The chorus is so upbeat, so catchy, so fast. But not only that, this album actually includes a lot of the slowest, most emotional Stone Sour songs ever. I think a lot of that influence from Paul Gray passing, definitely you can see that on this album. And some of the really, really slow tunes like Miracles, Pieces, Imperfect, Hesitate, those songs are stunning, slow, emotional, beautiful. Again, much like Through Glass on the last album, helped me get through a lot of tough times, and I'm pretty sure that's the same for a lot of people. People around the world were feeling the loss of Paul Gray at the time, and this album certainly does a pretty good tribute to his legacy and to his work. So that is my ranked 6 Stone Sour albums. You're going to have to let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with what I've said today. Let me know as well who else you'd like me to do these videos on. I'm trying to stick to bands that aren't making records anymore. So, because I'd like it to be a definitive list, not a list that then a band releases an album in 3 months' time and so the video's just void at that point. Obviously though, I would much prefer if some of the bands I make videos about did come back. That's fine. But yeah, in the next video, who knows who we're going to be rating. But let me know in the comments who you'd like me to rank, and let me know what other content you'd like to see. But guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Please like and subscribe to the channel. We're going to grow this thing as much as possible. And I'll see you in the pit.